now. I
All
am
right.
absolutely thrilled to have Dana Baker from Hayworth-Miller Funeral Home. I was just talking with Dana before we hit record, and I was telling her that I've been doing funerals for 21 years now, and have had the real privilege of getting to know funeral directors in 3 different states. And the more funerals you do, you develop a close relationship with the funeral directors. And so I've seen a side of this business and of this life that most people don't get to see. I mean, most people will be intimately involved with maybe 1 or 2 funerals in their lifetime, and so it's all new. And I just know that lots of people may have some questions, and also that your perspective, especially during this pandemic, is interesting. So I
Mm-hmm.
have just a few questions, and thank you for answering them. The first
Sure.
question most people may not realize, tell me exactly what is a funeral director? I mean, you have to have training. You just simply don't show up and take a job at the funeral home and start embalming people or doing funerals. So what do you have to do to be you, and what exactly do you do?
Well, we have to get a license. So we have to go to school and require a license by the state and by the North Carolina Board of Funeral Service in Raleigh. So we kind of answer to them. You have to be a intern for in the state of North Carolina. You have to be an intern for a year. So it's kind of like when you go to medical school, you can't just jump in and start doing surgeries. People oversee you and you have to be guided, and they go because when people are schooled with books and until you do it yourself,
Hmm.
you don't really know the ins and outs of everything. So yes, we are certified and we do have a license that we have to keep up. Every year we have to take CE classes. So yeah, you have to go to school to do that.
What do they teach you in school? I mean, I'm assuming as a funeral director, you meet with families, but do you also do the embalming yourself? I mean, are you qualified to do that?
Yes, so it's more schooling to do embalming. You have just directors, and then you have directors that do embalming. So there's extra school for that. And what was the first part of the question? I'm sorry.
What do they, when you go to school to be a funeral
Oh,
director,
oh, okay.
um,
So there's
it's a
all
degree in mortuary science, is that right? Is that what your a certificate or
mort-
degree or yeah?
mortuary science, and then we have. Eh, I'm sorry, Father Steve. I
Oh,
got like a million things going on in my
yeah, no.
head. Um, we do most of it is over the internet. Okay. That's why they want you to have an internship at a funeral home. So once you get an internship, you're still in school and you have to take all the courses as if you were going to run a funeral home.
Hmm.
So you have to take operations, you have to take another psychology, diving deeper into the psychology of death and dying.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of get in their mindset. You know, what are they thinking? There's people that are angry. I had a person last week that she screamed at me the whole time. She like literally screamed at me, and I told her that I was just trying to help her. I said, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I said, I'm here to help you. I'm trying to explain to you what the rules of North Carolina are. She was from Pennsylvania, but she just was so angry because her husband had died unexpectedly. So you kind of have to learn how to deal with difficult people.
Yeah. How do you do that? Because in every instance of your job, you're dealing with someone who's sad and hurting and grieving. So, I mean, certainly there are joyful moments and there's some good things that come out of that, but people are projecting their anger and their grief upon you. And I guess you've been doing this for how long now?
I've only been doing it for 8 years. This is
Okay.
my second career.
But you've seen everything by now.
I have.
Yeah.
I have
So
seen it.
how do you personally just sort of deal with that and not take it personally?
Well, number one, I am a believer, and I think that it helps to be a follower of Christ, and that he gives me strength and help every day. Because when you come in, some days, they're hurting,
Yeah.
and they hurt and you can see it. And sometimes I can't even look into their eyes, especially a man that has lost his wife over, they've been married for 60 years. And he's just, tears are going down his face. And he's like, please tell me why my wife died.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't, but I'm here to help you in any way I can. Just to be a sounding board to them, because a lot of people, to get it off their chest, they will relive that time when they died, their loved one died. And it helps them. It's kind of therapeutic in a way for them to go over all the details again. And then when you inject in that, because a lot of people feel guilty, they feel, I could have done something, and I'm like, well, let's see, what could you have done? Sometimes they just need somebody to talk to, somebody to listen them out and tell them what's going to happen next,
What people don't realize oftentimes is that when someone dies, the funeral home gets the body, right? I mean, you come to the hospital and pick up the body, or the home. And so
Mm-hmm.
from the place of death, be it in a hospital room or someone's bedroom, you are there from that moment till they go into the ground, or
Yes.
the mausoleum, or wherever they are. And so you, from beginning to end of the process, you are there,
Mm-hmm.
and you're
Mm-hmm.
their companion the whole way.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of training that must be involved in that. Um, so obviously everybody is impacted during this pandemic, and you were on the front lines of this in a way. How is everything
Yes.
for you and your colleagues during this pandemic?
Well, the funeral home in this area here, we have seen several cases of COVID, but we have not been hit like Charlotte, or of course New York. It's just horrible. I see pictures of the funeral directors are not just taking a little nap at their desk, and I don't see that on the news. And God knows, I love the nurses. I love everybody that's helping these people and their stress level. But to tell somebody that they can't see their loved one after they've passed, even in cremation, we let the families, we don't let them, we offer them to see their loved ones for a last time, to tell them goodbye. And with a COVID case, you can't. You can't tell them goodbye. So a lot of times these people are seeing their loved one go to the hospital, and that's the last time they see them. Because in North Carolina, what we're doing is, um, they are put in the casket, and the casket is closed, and that is not opened again ever. So, they're buried or cremated. So their family is not having a chance to tell them physically goodbye. So I try to tell people to get photos and remember the good times. Try to tell them goodbye in their own way, that this is just a body. It's kind of like having a glove, and I try to tell this to children, like teenagers and stuff. Imagine your hand, it moves, and you put the glove on. The glove is the body, so the hand is, you're moving it. When you take the glove off and put it down, the glove's not going to move anymore. So the soul is gone, but that body, that glove is still there.
Mhm.
So the people are not there. They just need to remember the good times and, make peace with it that way. I tell them, when all this is over, to have a celebration of life, or like a memorial service, and have all the things that the person liked and they can remember it. Like one time I had a service, and the gentleman loved candy. So we had bowls of M&Ms and Snicker bars and Skittles. And every time people would eat out of the jars or the little bowls, that they could remember that person eating that. So there's different ways. If you have a really good funeral director, that you can come up with ideas for that person's memory.
You mentioned something about the funeral directors in New York sleeping at their desks, and that made me think about that you, like Hayworth-Miller in every funeral home, is someone's on call all the time.
Yes.
So at 2 in the morning on Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
someone's there. So you have like an apartment there or something like that where people can sort of stay, or how does that work?
No, we're on call at home.
At home.
So
Okay,
we have to take, yeah, we'll take like papers,
gotcha.
all the paperwork home with us because, in the middle of the night, sometimes we don't think like we should.
Yep.
Like, even though I know the prices and the questions, sometimes I need to look at it just to make sure
Mm.
that I'm giving the person the correct answer. But yes, in case somebody calls at 2 a.m., you've got to be able to get up and answer their questions because they're hurting. They don't know. They've never went through this before. And we just let them know that, we do this every day and they don't. So we're here to help them in any way they can. Um, so that's, yeah, we're on call. We don't stay here physically. Now, they used to stay physically at the funeral homes. That was before, security
Gotcha.
and
Yeah.
alarm systems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
How about ballpark? How many funerals do you, Hayworth Miller, go at Solace Creek per week? I know it changes, and but on average.
well, it changes from day to day, but I can give you around 800 a year.
Okay,
Some months is way more, and then you'll have some months that's, not as bad, but
that's a lot of
um,
funerals, though. 800's a lot of funerals per year.
it is. It is.
When people find out that you are a funeral director, what's their first reaction? Do they kind of clam up? Do they giggle? Or what's the biggest misconception that you have to kind of help people work through about what your job is like?
I think a lot of people think that we're morbid or we don't have joy, but I remember growing up, and all the funeral directors that I remember was the really tall, white-headed, elderly men. And nowadays, there's a lot of women in this business, and I think that we bring maybe a softness to death, if you could say that. Just understanding, not that men are not understanding, they are. I'm just saying that, I don't know, we look at things a bit different. Like when they look at you and say, don't put too much makeup on my mom. I understand what they're saying. And of course the men do too, but they'll say, "Hey, Dana, look at this. Does that look okay?" And I go, "Yeah, it looks really good." Because there's a lot of men that can do makeup really well here. So, anyways, they kind of, when I tell people that I'm a funeral director, they look at me and back up a little bit, like, "Don't touch me," or and then I go, "I'm not going to take you with me," you know.
That was my question. I had a friend in another state who would always say that if he would go visit a friend in the hospital, he sometimes
Mhm.
felt like he was soliciting business, like he was the Grim Reaper coming to take them away. Do you get that same reaction
Oh,
sometimes?
absolutely, absolutely. It's like, and then one person said, "Well, I'll see you later," and I'm like, "You might not want to say that." But it's yeah, people have a perception, I guess, because we do work with the dead. um I don't know how to make them not look at me that way. If you know me, you know that you wouldn't know that I was a funeral director unless I told you. So,
In my 21 years of doing funerals, funeral directors almost always have the best sense of humor, which is what most people don't realize. And I think it's because most of us live with a denial of our own mortality. We don't
yeah,
like to think that we're going to die. You
that's
are
right.
intimately aware that we are. And
Uh-huh.
I think that knowledge, once you come to terms with that, you can live with more levity in life. You enjoy life because you
Oh,
know
yeah.
what it is.
A lot of people think if you pre-plan or if you talk about death, it's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's an omen. My mother-in-law was one of those people. She was dying of cancer, and I tried to talk with her about doing her pre-need, and she said no. She said, if I talk about it and I do a pre-need, then that's just giving up. And I said, it's absolutely not giving up, because that's the best gift that you could give your family, is to go ahead and plan out everything that you want to do, because they're in such agony to begin with. Why not make it a bit better for them to come in and everything is already filled out? You've picked out your casket, you've picked out everything. You can make payments. You don't have to pay everything all at one time. You can pick everything out. Uh, we use what we call a mortuary card, and this is what it is, front and back. And what we do is, this is all personal information that we fill out because we do the death certificates in-house. We take them to the doctor and have them signed, and then we pick them back up from downtown, and that's how you get the certified death certificates. So your funeral director would go over with you ever how many death certificates you might need, and why you would need that many. But when you do a pre-need, all this is pre-filled. So when your family, when your daughter or your son comes in, they do have to sign papers, but everything is already picked out and most likely paid for. And what that normally is a insurance policy. So what it does is, once you come in and you pick everything out and that is your price, it never goes up. So if you came in today in 2020 and you picked out a $10,000 funeral, 15 years from now, it's still going to be a $10,000 funeral. The only thing you will have to pay is like what we call cash advances. And what that is your death certificates, your flowers, your clergy honorarium. You can put that, you can pay for that. You can even pre-need all of that too. So I've had some funerals that everything was taken care of. The family didn't have to pay anything because they had planned it to the T.
Well, I can tell
So,
you from my perspective, where the survivors have the most stress is over where nothing was written down. And so not only are they grieving about the loss of mom or dad or someone, but now they have the guilt of not knowing what they wanted,
yeah.
trying to pick the scriptures or the hymns or all that. And it's just, you're right, it's one gift you can leave to your survivors. They don't have
Oh,
to
yeah.
worry about it, and they're not going to screw it up by picking something you
No.
want, right? So go ahead and pick what you want. And something you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, like the details, like this is why pre-planning is so important. Like death certificates, you have to have a certified certificate to close like every bank account, right? And to every insurance policy. I mean, it's complicated to do all those loose ends, and
Hmm.
you're the person to help people sort that out by getting the death certificates, because they go through you, right, to do all that.
Yes, they go through us to get the death certificates. And if they don't have, let's say you ordered 5 death certificates and you ended up needing 6, you can call us within the first year and we'll order it for you. You just have to pay us over the phone and you can come pick it up. But you can go downtown and get a copy.
Yeah.
And they're $10 a piece right now. They might go up a little bit, but at this point, they're $10 a piece. You do have to have originals for most everything that you or need to do. Some places will take a copy. You just have to ask them, hey, can you take a copy? Because they're $10 a piece. My mom passed away a month ago, like 4 weeks ago. So there's
Sure.
some places that I said, can you take a copy? And they're like, yeah. You just have to ask them, if they would take a copy of this. Most banks and insurance need the original.
Yeah.
So that's We just go over ever how many you might need.
Well, can I ask? Can I ask? And if it's not okay, I'll cut it out. Can I ask personally? How was it like, from your perspective, burying your mom a month ago, after knowing what you've done? I mean, in your business.
Uh, can you
So,
hear me?
yeah. Sorry, we had a
No,
we.
you froze.
Yeah, you froze too. We're now animated again. Am I
Oh,
alive?
good.
Good.
Yeah.
So, my mother died 10 years ago, and I did her funeral. So it was, an interesting perspective, doing the funeral after doing other funerals. How was it burying your own mother after this is your career?
Um, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. When I first came in and I seen her, because I did her makeup, I dressed her, I did everything. It's kind of, I know the Jewish people, they do their own.
Yeah,
They have a committee. It's a little unnerving, kind of seeing the person there, but I go back to the whole glove thing
yeah,
where just a shell. I knew her as my mother. I kind of look differently maybe than anybody else. I don't know, maybe because I'm so close to the situations here.
mm,
But when you walk in and you see somebody in the back that it is different. It is a little different because you look at them, you're like, and then you kind of remember everything. Like my cousin was here, and I walked in and I looked, and she was here. And I'm like, wow, I didn't think she was going to pass away this soon. And then my mother, I looked at it as doing the last thing that I could for her. I bathed her while she was in the hospital to make sure, that she was clean. I knew that she was going to pass away. And so I bathed her and made sure she looked okay before when they come to pick her up. And then I don't know. I think it was like a closure for me.
yeah,
It helped me in doing that.
yeah.
So
Brought you
I
into the
totally
world. You help
understand.
you help send her off. So yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I bet
So,
I know this, knowing you, is that every woman is someone's, mother, likely,
yes.
and you treat
Yeah.
with the same. You have that perspective, and as you're preparing the
Yeah.
body, you know that. Yeah.
I do. They think I'm a little crazy because I talk to them and I know they're not there, but it helps me a bit, and just tell them how pretty they looked, or you know when I write the obituary, I learn a bit about the person, and I don't know, I kind of feel like a connection there when I do their hair or their makeup, or I do their nails, because they'll say, Mom was prissy, and I'm like, oh, you would like this.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I think a funeral director has to have a caring heart and has to be slow to anger. Um, what else? I don't know. We just have to take a step back. When people holler, I had to kind of just close my eyes, and because it does make you a little angry, like, what am I doing? I'm just trying to help you. And you just have to let people know, hey, I'm here to help you. I'm not trying to do anything to hurt you. And sometimes people go, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that, but they're anxious.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that too.
Just two more questions. What's the thing you love the most about your job?
I love the people when they're kind. Um, it takes nothing to be kind. Even if you're in a bad mood and you don't want to come in the funeral home, once you're in a funeral home, we're just here to help you. And I love it when people say, I'm sorry, you know what, I'm just having a hard time. That makes me want to help them more. I'm like, I'm so sorry. What can I do to
Mhm.
help you? And sometimes they just want to talk to you, or they might just want a cup of coffee or some tea. And I'm just so happy to get it for them. Anything that we can do, that's what I love, helping people and seeing a smile on their face, like when they're talking about their loved one, and I hear something that they say, or they're talking to each other, or I read it in the notes. And I do that as a surprise when they have their service, like butterflies or something that I can do, and putting butterflies in the casket spray. And they're like, "How did you know?" And I'm like, "I just read the notes that your mom put in there that she liked butterflies." That kind of thing is priceless to me. I love doing things for people that they're not expecting it. We kind of want to go the above and beyond,
Yeah.
you know. So that's about it.
So as people now have seen you and know that you're not the Grim Reaper, and that
No,
if they do their pre-planning, they're not going to die, automatically that night.
right,
So
right.
how does someone go about doing that? They just call you, and how long does it take to do the initial interview? How do they go about making that connection to talk about pre-planning?
Well, we have here personal planning guides that will help you. So you can call, and there's a lady here that will mail them to you, Kathy Pierce
Mhm.
or Rick Parham. They have these booklets, and they'll mail it to you, and you can actually look at it, fill it out, and then um, they can send you a price list if you would like. But then you can call and make an appointment. If I'm not busy, I'll be glad to help anybody that wants to do their pre-need. And then if you want to fund it, you just get started on a payment plan. You can pay it in full. They have all kinds of plans, that you can work out. People say, "Well, what if I have an insurance policy?" Um, there's going to be things after death that your family could use that insurance policy for. When my mother-in-law passed away, she had her pre-need at Hayworth-Miller in Kernersville, but she also had a insurance policy. Thank God she had it, because they said that her last her radiation treatment was not approved by insurance before they gave it to her, and we had to come up with like $16,000. Well, if you didn't have insurance, who can write a check for $16,000?
Exactly.
I mean, things like that happen. Very rare, but it does happen. So having an insurance policy and a pre doesn't mean that you can't have a pre-need. So you can apply the insurance policy to a pre-need. You can assign an insurance policy to a funeral home, but it does not lock your prices in.
Gotcha. But the
So if
pre-need,
you have a $10,000 policy,
yeah.
the pre-need does lock the
Okay.
price in. Mhm.
That's good information. Um,
Yeah.
this has been fun for me and informative, and I appreciate you taking 30 minutes out of your day. I know you are busy. We were supposed to have a Bill with us as well, but Bill's in the back, working with someone now. So that happens. But thank you so very, very much for taking your time, and
Well,
I'll put the information for Hayworth Miller on the video, and people can give you a call.
okay, that'll be fine. Any questions, they can call and ask for me, Dana Baker. I'll be glad to answer any questions that they want. And if I can't, I will find somebody that can.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye.